Okay, there we go. Sorry about that, you guys. The signal was just doing what the signal does. And so we are officially back. We just gonna start this bad boy over from the very beginning as you guys are coming in. Whether you are here now or catching this thing on the replay, go ahead and tell God thank you. And even if you're catching it on the replay, go ahead and type in the comments and let us know what you are grateful for. I know I'm a little bit later. Than scheduled for today. But today was actually one of those days where it rained outside, and I'm just gonna be for real. It rained, and I allowed myself to just really just rest and to relax, being that it's also a holiday. So if you celebrate Memorial Day, then happy Memorial Day to you. I pray that you guys are eating some good food for you as well. I want to go ahead and dive into this afternoon's word, not morning. I'm so used to doing these in the morning. But I want to go ahead and dive into this morning's word. As always, welcome to another edition of Daily Manna with T. I will say that I'm grateful for a renewed mindset. Like, I'm grateful for God changing my perspective on what my life looks like, and even changing my perspective on what it means to actually wait on Him. Let me get my moderators in here. Hold on one second. Okay, there we go. Um, but I'm so grateful for God changing my perspective on what it means to wait on Him, and I'm grateful for God giving that He gives us, not just me, opportunities that where we failed to trust Him. He always gives us opportunities to just simply just get it right. I want to talk about something that God gave me today, and kind of what He's been dealing with me about. I feel like if you're a believer and you are genuinely on your relationship, your own walk to like learning how to trust God, but more so developing a relationship with God, then at some point or another in your journey, Bo, no, you will find yourself having to wait on God, whether it's waiting on God to open a door, waiting on provision to come, waiting for healing to come, waiting for a job to come. We will always at some point or another in our own walks with God have to wait on Him for something. And so today, like, He was dealing with my heart about the number one question that a lot of us have when we're waiting on God. And a lot of times the question or the thing that we wrestle with the most when it pertains to God is, how will I know that it's time? And sometimes the question that we ask God is it time for me to get my blessing yet? Is it time for me to get my breakthrough? Is it time for this? Is it time for that? And a lot of times, if we're not careful, we will become an anxious mess. And not only will we become anxious, but sometimes we find ourselves trying to help God out or even prematurely pursuing the things that we're believing God for. And so, even for me, like in my own journey and at different moments within like each season, I too have had that same question of, how do I know if it's time, or is it time? Waking up every single day is unbearable, and just asking God the question, is it time for me? Gonna be the day. What about now? What about now? It's kind of like, I don't know if you guys grew up or your kids grew up and have seen the movie. It's kind of like a little kid constantly asking you, am I there yet? Am I there yet? Am I there yet? Like, a lot of times when we're waiting on God, especially longer than we want to wait, a lot of times we have that question, am I there yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? And a lot of times what makes us ask God those questions is how uncomfortable the waiting phase becomes, or how uncomfortable circumstances become, or even just how uncomfortable life in itself is. And so God was dealing with my heart about this today, because I feel like in this, it's not even a season, but I feel like this month has brought me back face to face with what it is really like to have to wait on God. Can I get some fire emojis in the comments if you guys are following along? And if you guys have not yet pressed that like button, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. If you have not subscribed and this is blessing you, please be sure that you guys do that for me. Moderators, please be on alert and make sure that you guys are sifting through these comments to remove the people that are trolls. But I feel like I've been in a place in this month where I have literally been having to, like, come face to face with waiting on God. And it's been uncomfortable. It's been rocky moments. It's also been moments in having to wait on God where anxiety is set in. And even where I've like had to like ask God the question, like, when is it going to be time for me to get what I'm believing you for? When is it going to be time for you to provide in this way? When is it going to be time for this to happen or that to happen? And I found myself honestly and transparently, hey, myaniii, feeling very down about having to ask God the question of, is it time yet? And I'm going to just say this. A lot of times when we are sitting in a place of impatience, we enter into a heart space of entitlement. I'm going to say that again. A lot of times when we enter into a place of impatience, aka anxiety, our heart space, we also enter into a heart space of entitlement. And when we start feeling entitled, we start feeling as if I've waited long enough. I always have to wait. I've already gone through boom, 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 boom. And it doesn't make us feel any better, and it doesn't move God's hand any further. But I've had moments like that in the month of May because I haven't wanted to wait on certain things, and I've just been flat out exhausted by the wait because of myself. But today, like, God asked me, like, how do you really know, like, when it's time for God to move? And I just sat and I just thought about it. And I thought about it from the aspect of what my fear used to be. I used to have a fear that God was going to let me miss my blessing. Anybody else feel that way? I used to have a fear that God was going to let me miss my moment because people had failed me. People had remained silent. I put in all the work, and instead of people speaking up, instead of people thinking about me, I was always an afterthought. And so when it came down to my walk with God, I felt like the process had me feeling like I was God's afterthought. Like, God, you blessing everybody else, and I'm just an afterthought. Where after you bless everybody else, it's like, oh, let me bless Tyra, let me do this, let me do that. Even though that is not how God operates, because of me, because of my childhood trauma, and because of me not really fully being healed. Bo, where are you? Because of me not fully being healed in that area, I felt like I was an afterthought. And so my number one fear that I had in that season of waiting was that, like, God was going to remain silent and not tell me when it was time, or that he was going to let me miss it. I feel like, it was the equivalent of, having someone like going somewhere with a friend and them telling you, oh, you don't need to put it in your address, I know where we going. And then y'all are driving where you're driving, and they're all in their phone and they're not paying attention. And have y'all ever like ridden with somebody like that who was horrible at giving directions? They let you just about pass your turn and then say, oh, you were supposed to turn what? So I felt like that. I felt like God was going to do that to me. Like, he was going to let me miss my moment. And now I'm stuck in a season that I don't want to be stuck in, or I'm stuck in a circumstance that, I feel is about to break me. And so instead of trusting God in those moments, I would automatically go to trying to figure it out myself. I feel like there are some of you guys that are watching me that maybe that explains exactly where you've been at. Maybe you've had some disappointing moments from people, and it's just kind of like, God, I don't want to be blindsided. I don't, so let me just try to do it in my own strength. Let me figure it out myself, just in case you don't tell me, when it's time for me to get my blessing. And so I thought about that fear that I had, and it's a very valid fear that a lot of people have. If you've been hurt by people on a consistent basis, it's something that you're gonna feel. But I thought about that particular fear about, God is going to let me miss my moment. And then the Lord, and one thing that, like, I've gathered up about God is, no matter where you are, no matter how long you've waited, when it is your time to be blessed, you cannot miss God because he is that big. I'm gonna say it again. I'm just gonna let it marinate. The number one thing that I have found out about God is that when it is your time to be blessed by him, you cannot miss it because he is just that big. He's just that big of a God. Meaning, when it's time to be blessed, he will move hell, heaven, earth, and everything in between to make sure that you get what's for you. He will change people's hearts. He will override governmental systems. He'll override your credit situation. He will override whatever you feel is going to hold you back to make sure that you get your blessing. And like when I really just sat and thought about my life, at moments where it was time for me to get what God had for me, everything around me pointed to that one thing. It wasn't, I didn't have to guess. I didn't have to say, God, are you sure? And I'm going to say this. I feel like if you have to even ask God, is it time or is this my blessing? Then chances are it's not time. Yeah. I'm going to say it again. If you even have to ask God, is it time? Or, is something your blessing? Then you have your answer right there. But when it was time for God to do certain things, time for a vehicle, time to move, time for, other things in my time for a dog, it's like I could not miss it. Everything around me pointed to it. I remember before I got that Audi in 2019, I was driving a 2000 Toyota Avalon, and y'all hear me talking about this story a lot. How I'm gonna talk about it again. I don't have no excuse, but because it's relevant. Before I got like that Audi, I remember like months prior to that, I had been looking prematurely. I felt entitled because I felt like I was impatient. I felt like I had already endured enough. I had already waited. I felt like I had already paid the cost to get them to get a vehicle. True story. And I was going to these car lots, and it was just one thing after the next, after the next, after the next. And I was so very frustrated because the vehicle that I was driving, that 2000 Toyota Avalon, like it was getting to the point where I knew the grace was running, where I knew the vehicle was coming like to an end. I'm driving this vehicle every day. It ain't cranking as good. It ain't driving as good. It ain't braking as good. Like I'm noticing a lot more issues. The same way how in other areas, when it was time for change to come, when it was approaching time for me to get what God had for me, everything about that situation, let me know that the grace is, I'm not going to be able to stay in this particular space much longer. And so I was very frustrated with God, like going to these car lots, and I'm like, God, this is a right now need. This ain't a want. This is not me being overzealous. This is me saying, hey, I need a reliable vehicle. That was all I wanted. And I remember feeling so frustrated, feeling like God was going to he was going to let the vehicle go out on me and that I was going to be back stuck. That was my greatest fear. And I'm going to just say this, your greatest fear will push you to a place of impatience. And sometimes if you let impatience linger long enough, impatience will turn into bitterness. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not gonna say it again. I'm just gonna let it marinate. And so, like, that was me in that season. I was impatient, and impatience turned to bitterness. And it got to the point where I thought God was withholding from me. I thought that I thought that He was going to let my greatest fear come true. I thought that you're gonna let this vehicle go out, and I'm gonna be right back in the same position that I just came out of. And so it made me feel disheartened. And I'm gonna say it again: your greatest fear will turn into you being impatient with God. And if you linger in a place of impatience, it will turn it. It will turn into you like being bitter with God. And so, that was really why I was bitter, because I thought that God was going to fail me. And that's honest. I thought that He was going to let the vehicle run out and that I was going to be in the same situation that I had already came out of. And so I went through a phase for a few months where I was bitter. Like, I'm like, I don't want to follow you in this area. I don't want to listen to what you got to say in this area. That was me. And, it got to the point where one day when it was time, like everything about that situation pointed to it being time, because that was my main question. Well, if it's not time now, how am I going to know? I mean, because for me, the situation was bad. So I'm like, if it ain't time when I think it should be time, how am I going to know that it's time? Well, I'll tell you how I knew it was time. I told God, and this is a true story. I was so upset with God. I said, I'm not looking anymore. If you want me to look, you're going to have to make me look. Like at this point, I'm so fed up on like, look, you gonna have to make me. I don't encourage nobody to pray that prayer. And so this one particular morning, the vehicle was giving me issues. My mechanic said, bring the car to me. I brought the car to him, and I'm letting him listen. And I'm gonna just say this. I had been stuck in that car for so long that I even had thoughts of fixing the car up to where it was more reliable. Well, maybe God just want me to have this vehicle, and maybe I can just fix every little thing wrong on the car. And that was my mindset. I'm gonna say it again. Nobody talks about how sometimes God will tell you no, and it'll have you in a mindset where you almost begin to settle in a place that's only meant for passing by. So while I was bitter, I was just like, I'm just gonna fix this car up, and I'm just every little piece that's wrong with it, I'm just gonna go to pull apart, or I'm gonna go here and we just gonna fix this car all the way up and fix it as brand new as spanking. So this one particular day, the car was giving me issues. My mechanic at the time, he said, T, bring the car to me. I brought the car to him, and he's looking at it. True story. He's looking at the vehicle, and I will never forget, like getting on the ground, looking under the car. He said, T, like, look under this car. And I believe it was the carburetor or something like that. And it was like the color, it was like an orangish yellow color. I kid y'all not. It was like an orangish yellowish color, yellow orangish color, if that's even a word. That's the color of it. And he said, come here. And I remember like getting on like my knees and my hands and looking under the car. He said, you see that? He said, your car can catch on fire. You do not need to drive this vehicle. And I remember asking him, is it safe for me to drive the vehicle back home? And I remember like driving. He said, yeah, you can drive it home, but don't go nowhere else if it's not an emergency. So I remember getting home, and all I could think about was, I'm stuck now. What are my options? I done tried I've tried in the months prior to get a vehicle. Nothing worked. And I'm gonna be for real. Sometimes those failed attempts, those moments where we are impatient, they will tempt us to not pursue what God has for us when it's time. I'm gonna say it again. Sometimes when we impatiently pursue what we're believing God for, when it is time, those things those failed attempts will tempt us to not even show up. So this was me in that season. I'm tempted to not show up. I'm like, yeah, Lord, I don't even just want to show up, because I remember when that failed. I remember when that happened. I remember when that happened. And here I am sitting at the house, and I'm like, what do you want me to do? And I knew that in that moment, I had no choice but to look for vehicles. This particular day, it was a Friday. It was either a Friday or a Saturday. I think it was a Friday. And I remember like that night looking at vehicles online, mustering up the courage to look again. And that particular night, I saw two vehicles that were on the car lot, and it said coming soon, but they had pictures of the vehicles. These two vehicles were at the same car lot. I had been looking on the car site daily. Before I took that little hiatus, I had been looking daily, and every single time, and this added to my frustration, because I'm like, God, you telling me to look, and it's the same vehicles on this site. Ain't nothing new on this site, and I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting flustered, because I'm like, you keep telling me to look at what this look like. Like, look at what this looked like. It's nothing there. The same way how like some of y'all that may be believing God for jobs, and you may be looking at jobs, and you may be like, God, I keep going to the job site. It's the same jobs. It's the same thing on all these sites. It ain't nothing new. So that made me frustrated, and I'm like, I don't want to look. I'm not looking anymore. And so when I looked this one particular night, it was a Friday night, I remember seeing two vehicles, and the vehicles had, I want to say, one of the vehicles was coming soon. It was the Audi. Another vehicle, the same car lot, it had just gotten there that Friday. And so like, I remember like God telling me like, you need to go and you need to like view this vehicle. And I was in such a position that I had no choice but to go. It was like go or be stuck. And I feel like a lot of times when it is time for like us to receive what God has for us, that's really the choice that we're faced with. Either you go or you get stuck. Yeah. I'm going to say it again. When it's finally time for you to receive what God has for you, the only decision that you have is to go in the direction that God wants you to go. Because think about it. We already be struggling. We already be going through things. So it's like, I have no choice but to do it again. Now, you be sometimes a little bit intimidated because of past experiences. But what I saw was that moment that everything around me, everything around me was pointing to it. The vehicle matched the vision. Both vehicles matched the vision. The price range wasn't that different. Like, everything literally matched. I pray that I'm making sense. Everything literally matched up. And everything was pointing towards, you got to move in this direction. Now, I'm going to be for real. It was not a smooth sailing journey. I know a lot of times we think that when it is time for God to do a thing or for us to receive a thing, that is smooth sailing. There was still work that I had to do. Because in order for me to get that vehicle, it required for me to tackle the lives that I had been running from. I had been running from student loan debt. I had been running from doing my taxes because for a while, for a good minute, I hadn't made enough to like even file for taxes. So, these were things that I had to tackle. I had to tackle the fact that a car had gotten repossessed and work on debt. And it was a stressful time. On top of being stressful, and this is a whole nother gym, the salesman was rushing me to like, rushing me about the bank's finances. Well, I got somebody else looking at it. And it got to a point where I felt so much pressure that I had to tell the car salesman, if somebody else gets it before me, they just get it before. It is what it is. I can't move faster than the bank, and that just is what it is. And I remember a whole week went by, and I had the hardest time. They had sold my student loans. I couldn't figure out where my student loans were. Finally figured it out, and it was a very lengthy. I'm not lying to y'all. It was so lengthy of a process, and I was so discouraged. I'm like, I finally find a vehicle, and you mean to tell me that, like, I'm not gonna get it? This car salesman saying it's gonna sell, and the bank lady was so sweet. Her name was Brittany. She was so sweet. Well, we can always find another. And I felt my heart sink in that moment because I'm like, if she only knew how long it's taken me, how long I've been waiting, how long I've been suffering. And I remember getting off the phone with her that particular day. And I remember getting off the phone and God told me, you need to call this student loan place that they sold your loans to. And the moment that I called them, this was like within 24 hours, all this happening, they found my account. And after that, by this time, it's like a Thursday. Friday comes around and I've get turned in all the paperwork, giving them everything that they need. And I kid y'all not, she called me back Friday. It was like 2 p.m. And I had been so depressed because I'm thinking, man, this is just going to be another failed attempt just like last time. I'm preparing for a blow. And in the middle of me just getting up praising God, she calls me and she says, we got a deal. And so, she wasn't talking to me. She was like, Monday, afternoon, you can pick it up around 3 p.m. It'll be good for you to pick up. I said, okay, cool. And then I'm like, she ain't mentioned nothing about a down payment because she had mentioned a $1,200 down payment. And then it had went down to $500 down payment. And I remember like going to her and I'm like, hey, what is the down payment? And she said $0 down. Because I was thinking, I'm like, I'm going to have all these hoops to like, and all these hurdles to just jump. Because faith sometimes will make you feel restless. Faith sometimes make you feel like you have to exert so much energy just fighting for it. And that was basically the story. That Monday, I picked the vehicle up, $0 down, and it was a done deal. And I feel like, a lot of times when God does move, when it is time, especially after we suffer for a while, after we've waited for a while, it's like when it's time, you can't miss it. It's raining again. Because everything around you is saying, you got to go. Go or be stuck. Go or die and load the bar. Go or be stuck. You have a choice. Either you go swim, either you go swim to shore or you gonna drown. And it's a tough decision for us all when the time comes. I say all of that to say, stay the course. Stay the course. So, if this is your word, can you tell God thank you? When it's time, you will know. Because everything around you will be pointing to it. Sometimes, I don't know if y'all have ever experienced this, going outside and, have y'all ever like been able to go outside and be able to tell it's about to rain? Even if the weatherman says it ain't no rain in the forecast, have y'all ever like had a moment where you go outside and you like, oh, it's gonna pour down. It's about to straight up, it's finna storm. It's about to straight up storm and pour down. And you think about, how do you know? Hey, Miss Nicole, how do you know that it's about to storm? You can look up, you can smell the rain, you can see the dark clouds. It's coming down now. You can see the dark clouds, the sun ain't out. Like, the signs are always there. Depending on where you live in the States, it may be a little bit more muggier than usual, but you can always kind of tell. And so, when it's time, you won't miss it. You will not miss it. And so, that's it. Can y'all hear the rain? It's raining hard. Can y'all hear it? Like it's pouring. It's pouring out of nowhere. Bless you, Bo. But yeah, that's it. That's it. If this blessed you, tell God thank you. To those of y'all that feel led to sow, you just label this your stay the course seed. The number that I hear is 1010. I ain't never heard that number, but I hear that number 1010. So if you feel led to sow, hold on, he's giving me a scripture. If you feel led to sow, you just label this your stay the course seed. Wow, hold on. Let me read this scripture really quickly. My God. That's the number that I hear. Stay the course. John 10 and 10 was the scripture that he gave me. The thief comes not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Like when you really like think about what God is saying about like the timing of it, like he's exposing the devil's lies while we wait on him, reminding us of what the devil's job is to do. I pray that I'm making sense. He's reminding us, Visha, you can put myanii's cash out, but he's reminding us of it's thunder. He's reminding us of what the devil's agenda is. The devil's agenda is to get us to stop. It's to get us to like say, you know what? I'm done. The devil's agenda is to do that. And so, that is it, y'all. I love y'all. I am rooting for you guys. I'm about to switch over to TikTok. We gonna flow for a little bit, and that is going to be it. So if you would like to, switch over there to TikTok with us, please do so. As always, the links are in the bio not in the bio, but in the description box of every single video if you want to sow. If you want to buy a session, we have about 5 more days until the sessions are no longer $35. I currently have one person that's on the waiting list for a session. And so if you would like to sow towards his session, you can sow towards his session via any of the avenues and just put free session. And so that is it, y'all. I love y'all. I'm rooting for y'all. And so until next time, y'all. Peace.